Well, welcome to another episode of our PiXL Drone Show. This is the podcast where we talk to industry professionals about how they use the drones in their space. Your host today is Kara Murphy, Haya Kesterlu, and myself, Greg Reverdio. And if you're new to the show, make sure that you subscribe to our channel, and especially if you watch it on YouTube. Now, I'm very excited about our guest today, and the reason is because Adrian is an all-around good guy. He's always helpful, he's always positive, and he's a very strong proponent for the industry. It is my honor to introduce Adrian Doko as our new guest this week. Now, Adrian wears a lot of different hats in the industry. He's the president of the AUVSI Lone Star chapter. And for those of you that don't know what AUVSI stands for, it's Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International. And we'll talk about that in the show. He's also the founder of his own drone company called Imperial Aerial. And then you can also find him as the host of the Drone Club. It's a very popular drone hangout on Clubhouse. And if you don't know what Clubhouse is, we'll also talk about it. And then lastly, he's an FAA safety team for the North Texas, and he's a drone pro over there as well. And we'll also talk about everything he does there. So Adrian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Greg. Glad to be here and appreciate the opportunity to speak to your folks, and looking forward to some interesting dialect. So thank you.
Well, Adrian, why don't we get started and tell us how you get hooked into flying drones?
Oh, yeah. So essentially, I come from a hospitality background. I'm a third generation restaurateur, but back about 7 years ago, I was introduced to the drones, and I got bit by the bug. And my first gig was being that guy with the drone at a festival. And fortunately, the producers cued me and said, "Hey, why don't you fly your drone around and get some pictures and videos?" And it just took off after that. So essentially, I kind of studied and got my 333 exemption, and finally dove into the drone space, created the company Imperial Aerial a couple of years after, and then got into the industrial aspect of drones through aerial thermography. So I'm also a certified level 2 thermographer, and do a lot of inspections and analysis, whether it's infrastructure, buildings, etc. But yeah, I'm just geeking out about drones, and I love it.
That's awesome. You quickly mentioned Imperial Aerial, your company. Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of drone services that you offer? I mean, do you specialize in one particular area, or is it more covering all kinds of different projects?
Right. So we do all type of work, whether it's cinematography. We've worked with the Air Force on several projects, NFL, Major League Baseball. But we kind of noticed the market getting saturated with creative content. So we quickly transition into more industrial inspections, whether it be wind turbines, solar array assessments, building inspections, infrastructure, bridges, roads, you name it. So we found, that particular niche has much more of let's say, a payout, if you will, once we transition to the industrial side of the drone aspect.
Has your business been impacted much by COVID?
Yeah, initially, a lot of our creative work for marketing was definitely impacted, but we noticed an uptick. A lot of these companies realized the power of marketing, and the traditional sense of marketing on commercials through TV, it wasn't as successful as social media platforms. So at the beginning, we did take a huge impact or downfall, and then it quickly went back up. And fortunately, a lot of our construction projects were already in the books, so those are long-term service agreements, but we did notice a slight deficit with the creative content.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, Adrian, what kind of drones do you fly?
So probably like 90% of the other people, a lot of DJI stuff, whether it's the Inspire 2 with the X7. I mean, one of my favorites is the Inspire 1 with my XTR. A lot of people have written that drone off, but I have a lot of Phantom 4s, Inspire 2s, Mavics, and then we have some custom built drones that we use that are not mines in particular. Those are, well over $200,000 rigs with optical gas imaging sensors and really specific payloads that we use for oil and gas. So there's a wider range, but most of my stuff is DJI. I'm starting to dabble with little the Autel stuff as well, but the bulk of it is basically DJI.
Yeah. The follow-up for you, talking about DJI drones. I mean, there are rumors that we're going to see a Mavic 3 drone, hopefully before the year is over still. What are some of the things that would get you excited about a DJI Mavic 3 drone?
I know it's a lot to ask for. However, having the capability to change lenses is really one
Yeah,
of those holy grails. I mean, to swap from a wide angle to a nifty
yeah,
50 and really be able to punch in, whether it's for creative content, for inspections. That Mavic 3 is everyone, the whole industry is waiting for that and drooling. So whatever it is, I'm sure it's going to blow us away because DJI is really feeling the heat from Autel and these other Skydio manufacturers. So I think DJI is going to hit it out the park with the next one.
I definitely hope you're right, and I hope you're right on the interchangeable lenses as well. I mean, I got my money ready and waiting for that drone.
Hey, Adrian, let's talk about AUVSI. So you're the president of the Lone Star chapter in Texas. What does the chapter do? And I know there are chapters all over the country. Tell us more about AUVSI in itself, your chapter, and I know you're involved in a lot of different things we were talking about before the show. Maybe you can share some of that stuff.
Yeah, so essentially, our Lone Star chapter is really fortunate because we're situated here in the state of Texas. There's a lot of different opportunities, whether it's industrial, commercial, or even recreational. So essentially, what we try to do in our capacity is educate and advocate for all things unmanned, and that could be anything from unmanned ground vehicles. Actually, we have several different platforms, but we have a company called Kodiak Robotics that has semi trucks that actually autonomously, well, I should say, without a driver, drive on a daily basis from Dallas to Houston. And we have companies like Neuro that delivers pizza with an unmanned van. And then we have a ton of unmanned aerial capabilities. And also some maritime. So essentially what we try to do is promote and advocate for all things unmanned, whether it's at the local level, community, state, and even federal. Most recently, a good friend of ours and also a board member, Scott Stoffman, who's with the Drone Service Providers Alliance, we went to Austin and actually with Jared Janicek and Christopher Jenseth as well, also the board members, and actually defeated a bill that was proposing to monetize the airspace and actually making beyond visual line of sight a criminal act. So we try to advocate for these technologies and educate, the legislators, because a lot of these guys don't know any better. They're lawyers. They don't really know about the technology and their capabilities. So we try to educate and advocate and then connect the people with these emerging technologies.
Yeah, I think to educate people and to connect people, of course, having face-to-face meetings and in-person conferences are a big deal. AUVSI Exponential is going to take place in Atlanta from August 16th till 19th this year, after being away for, I think, at least over a year. Can you tell us a little bit about how COVID has impacted drone conferences and what we can expect from Exponential going forward? I mean, is there always going to be an online component now, or might that change?
So I believe AUVSI has approached this with a hybrid solution. We prefer in person. That seems like where most of the work is
Yeah.
done. So, but this year it's going to be special. I know everyone's got cabin fever and everyone wants to get out and grab a beer or a cup of coffee with their colleagues. So we'll be in Atlanta the 16th through the 19th, and we're expecting a huge turnout. Normally we have about 8,000 attendees. We're estimating around 6,500 or so. But the cool thing about Exponential is, it's the largest drone conference in the world. And you have companies from all walks of life, whether it's Israel, Norway, Asia, you name it, companies there. And we are anticipating a lot of new platforms, softwares to be announced this year because of delay from COVID. So I'm really looking forward to catching up with a lot of old friends and checking out a lot of this new technology that's going to be presented here in the next week.
That sounds really exciting. I went to AUVSI in Chicago in 2019, and what you just said makes so much sense because you just have a variety of companies and platforms, and it's really an opportunity to learn a lot. Are there any other shows that you're excited about this year? Possibly Commercial UAV Expo, anything else you plan on attending?
Yeah, so absolutely, we'll definitely be at Commercial UAV Expo in Vegas this year. I'm really, like I said, looking forward to catching up with a lot of old friends. And it looks like, hopefully, if the Delta variant doesn't spread, looks like it's going to be a successful event as well. We're also planning here in the state of Texas to have our, unfortunately, Interdrone canceled. A lot of you guys are aware of. So we're going to pick up the slack and see if we can have our own drone conference by drone providers for drone providers. So in the next quarter of next year, we're anticipating to have a conference of our own, but this one's going to be structured a little differently. We're going to have demonstrations. This is going to be out in the field event. We're actually going to be flying these platforms and teaching people on the different software and hardware that's going to be available coming up. So look out for that in the near future.
This was the kind of the format of the event that you and I went to in Texas, and I thought that was super successful. Being able to just see the drones flying, fly the drones themselves, walk around. It was just great to have something outdoors and see it. So that was really cool. Now let's shift gear a little bit and talk about the drone club. I think you started the drone club on Clubhouse. Can you tell us a little bit more about, well, one, what Clubhouse is? Because I think a lot of people don't really know what it is.
Yeah, fantastic question, Greg. Thank you. So Clubhouse is essentially an app that is more based on audio format. So it's really lowbrow, easy to get in. But the beauty of Clubhouse is you have access to some of the most brilliant people in the world. I know Elon Musk jumps on there every now and then, Bill Gates. I mean, you have the pantheon of great minds that you actually have access to in a live and direct format. So essentially, Clubhouse is an app where communities of like-minded people get together and discuss issues or topics. We felt that the drone community was underrepresented, so we took the initiative to create the Drone Club. And as of today, we are the largest drone-affiliated club on Clubhouse. We have weekly meetings, or clubs as we call them. Every Wednesdays at 3 p.m., we have a drone mapping specific. This Wednesday at 3 p.m., we'll be discussing LiDAR implications on drone mapping. And then every Saturday at 3 p.m., we have general discussions about the drone space. So I believe we'll be talking about thermal. And congratulations, Greg. I understand you recently completed your aerial thermography certification. So kudos to you for getting that done.
Thank you. Yeah, that was last week. That's an intense course when you still have to run a business on the side and do this online all day for 4 days in a row. But yeah, lots of really interesting information in there. So it's I'm actually looking forward to level 2 possibly. So
I got a follow-up question for you on this, Adrian. How often on Clubhouse do you guys bring guests into the show, and what kind of tips and recommendations would you have for people looking to create a community, whether it's on Clubhouse or even somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the cool thing about Clubhouse is you have access to people like Greg, like Vic Moss, like John McBride. I think Kara's on there every now and then as well. So that's the beauty of Clubhouse. You know, you can jump on in your pajamas and have an in-depth discussion with these brilliant-minded people, specifically in the drone industry. So we've had folks from JPL, from NASA, I mean, all walks of life that come onto the show and discuss different aspects or different facets of the drone industry. And recently, we've been talking about advanced air mobility. We've had several initiatives from NASA is actually funding one of our North Texas UAS integration initiatives. And we're discussing how we can implement advanced or drone taxis, if you will, into North Texas by creating trustworthy systems so we can gain that trust from the community. So there's all types of things going on.
That Clubhouse has been an effective tool in uniting people, growing your network, just making connections or getting people more excited about the drone industry?
Oh, absolutely. We've noticed a huge increase of recreational pilots. Just by scrolling through Clubhouse, drone kinds of sparks interest. And we've noticed people from all over the world. We've had folks from Afghanistan, essentially crying to us because they can't use drones because it's a no-fly zone in some of these countries. So they've actually contemplated moving out of the country to get into the drone industry. So there's people from all over the world that are really interested in these emerging technologies. And basically, we're just there to educate them and keep the national airspace as safe as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I've entered the NFT space and I'm on Twitter a lot, and particularly I'm hopping into Twitter Spaces. Is that something you'd consider? Do you think there's enough of a drone community on Twitter that you would start those up as well? Because they've worked a lot on that platform and it's really seamless now. It's easy to use and it's easy for people. I mean, it's modeled after Clubhouse, obviously, but is that something you're looking into possibly?
Yeah, I've dabbled in Twitter a little bit. I love Twitter. I'm on there all the time for my posting and stuff. But it seems like Clubhouse has really found their niche. So, if you want to go check out photos, you go to, Instagram. If you want your news, you go to Twitter. And if you want an audio platform, I think I personally would stick to Clubhouse just because there's such a diverse group. And this essentially started for actors and producers in Hollywood. And it's a lot safer space because your privacy is protected a little bit more than these other platforms. But I love the Twitter. I'm glad they're adopting it. I think Facebook is going to have a variance of the Clubhouse format as well.
Let's switch again gears a little bit, and you have so many different roles. I want to make sure we cover all of them. Let's talk about your role as a drone pro. Tell us, for those of you that are not familiar, what a drone pro does, and working as a FAAST team member with the FAA, what does that consist of?
Yeah, that's awesome. So we volunteer for the FAA safety team. We don't represent the FAA at any capacity. What we're trying to do is educate people on doing the right thing, specifically recreationalists, but even drone professionals. So we go out and we host events. We have monthly fly-ins. We've had a swap meet last week where people brought in either their FPV drones. We sold over $6,000 worth of drones, whether it's Skydio, DJI, Autel, you name it. But essentially, we try to get the community together by traveling through different parts of the state of Texas, for example. And I've been recently named the lead drone pro for North Texas. So what we do is go out and teach people on the proper way and making sure we keep the airspace as safe as possible, but also educating the future workforce. A lot of these big companies like Boeing and Bell, they're looking for that workforce for the next generation. So we get out there and try to educate people on how they can get. And keep in mind, drones are the easiest barrier to aviation. Before, you'd need at least 15 to 20 grand to get a pilot license. Now all you need is $150 and you can be a remote pilot. So we try to teach people and try to keep the airspace as safe as possible through these community gatherings.
So, talking about keeping airspace as safe as possible and talking about the FAA, I think one of the biggest things that's coming our way quickly now is remote ID for drones. Do you see remote ID as something favorable for the drone community and the industry, or do you see it more as a hindrance that is going to prevent people from enjoying this hobby?
Yeah, so my personal views are not that of the FAA, the AUVSI, or any organization that I represent. I think it's a double-edged sword. I want to give a shout out to Ray State Quads for stepping up and challenging, the ruling. I personally have a few concerns on the safety of Part 107 pilots or drone pilots in general. So I think it's going to be a breakthrough, and the only way we get to beyond visual line of sight is with the remote ID and the other capabilities that unmanned traffic management, for example, is going to be crucial for remote ID. But I think we need to do it the right way the first time. So, there should have been a little more transparency. There should have been a little more outreach. And all those comments that we submitted, should have been heard. For example, the Aviation Ruling Committee had some suggestions that weren't really implemented. So there's all types of issues. That's kind of a loaded question, Haya, but you're right. I'm for it, but let's do it the right way the first time around. And let's
Yeah.
include everybody in the conversation.
I agree with you. I mean, I think it's a necessary evil in a way, right? I mean, we need it in order to move forward, but I think it needs to be fine-tuned here and there. And reading between the lines in your answer, I think probably one of your big concerns will be identifying or the location of the pilot when flying a drone. I know a lot of people share that concern, especially when drones are expensive and nice things to have, of course. Um, My next question for you then really is, do you think that the FAA is equipped to be dealing with such a large and fast growing industry as the drone industry? I mean, we have so many flight hours. I think we're well beyond flight hours compared to manned aviation. We've had no fatalities as of yet, as far as I know. Do you think it's time for the FAA to start a separate division that's purely focused on unmanned aviation?
Yeah, if it doesn't do that, they're going to have to combine agencies. For example, the FCC is going to have to dedicate a spectrum to unmanned systems, as well as other, three-letter agencies are going to have to start combining their resources to make this thing as successful as possible. But I totally agree with you, Haya. You know, the FAA is not only underfunded but understaffed, and
Yeah.
their capabilities are lagging when it comes to UAS. And that's part of the reason I joined the FAA safety team. We need more representation from the drone service providers. So I would implore everyone to reach out and join the safety team. We need more people in our industry to be vocal on what we want for our industry.
Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
saying that. I mean, especially also with the DEC, the Drone Advisory Committee. I mean, it took forever to get people like Kenji and Vic to join, to be able to join, I should say. So I wholeheartedly agree with your statement that we need more drone pilots to become part of the FAA somehow.
So, Adrian, let's talk about Texas in general because we talk to public safety agencies in Texas a lot, and we realize that Texas is kind of leading the charge at this stage for UAS in terms of public safety. Why do you think Texas is so far ahead in the drone world at this stage?
Well, we have, the wind in our sails right now, and Coit kind of nailed it. There's no egos here. We want this thing to work out, not just for Texas, but for the nation. And we're not just talking about drones. We're talking about advanced air mobility. We're talking about all sorts of uncrewed applications. And we're fortunate because obviously the industry, we have a lot of industry. We have, invested businesses, and we're reaching out to our legislators and explaining the benefits. It's really easy to get someone's attention when you talk about money. You can make the case, and Vic Moss says this a lot. He says, man, I tell these people we can save them millions of dollars a day. It costs $1 million an hour to shut down a major highway, an artery, for transportation. If we can prove our case that we can do the same thing for a lot cheaper and a lot quicker. So normally those procedures take about four hours or so for a crime scene reconstruction, for forensics. We can do that in 30, 45 minutes with a drone with better data at a fraction of the cost, a lot safer. So when you state those cases specifically to these legislators, they tend to listen. And we're really fortunate in the state of Texas because we have a lot of industry that is specifically well positioned for these emerging technologies.
Question for you, Adrian, on this. What do you think that we can do to help other first responders elsewhere in the country to get on board and to help them to launch their drone programs? Because I still feel that a lot of people are trying to reinvent the wheel or try to build everything from scratch. And it seems that there's so much knowledge and experience already available that we can use to get those people to ramp up much faster.
Yeah, that's going to be crucial moving forward. We need to standardize the protocols for public safety. There should be one unified standard operating procedures, and we're fortunate here. We have the PSERT, the Public Safety Unmanned Response Team, that has created this type of protocol. Now, if we can take that national, that's going to foster the growth of these UAS programs, and we need dedicated drone operators in all of these public safety programs. So that, as well as funding, we need more grants to be written for these public safety, more funding. I recall about 6 months ago, we donated a couple of drones to a public safety in Dublin, Texas, and about 2 months later, they called us back and said, "Hey, thank you. We saved 3 lives with those drones you donated." So the return on investment of these drones and these emerging technologies are phenomenal, but we need to have a standardized protocol for all public safety, and we need more funding. We need to require legislators to provide these funds for public safety entities to get these tools in their hands.
So Adrian, I think one of the big challenges that we have in the first responder community now with the use of drones is that the federal government is not allowed to buy and use drones that are containing Chinese-made parts or drones that are totally made in China. And we know that a lot of the good drones and reliable drones and affordable drones are made in China. How much of a problem do you think this is, and how much are you concerned when it comes to data security from Chinese-made drones?
Well, it's a huge issue, specifically with the supply chain constraints now, even if we wanted to. And our business, my personal business, has suffered because of these requirements when we're doing governmental jobs. For example, the job that we had to do for the Air Force, we're requiring a specific blue drone. Well, those drones weren't available even if you wanted to purchase. There was a 6-month waiting period. So that's an issue moving forward. As far as privacy concerns, a lot of people need to understand it's how you use these tools. If you don't open up those channels for to share any of that information, there shouldn't be any concerns for privacy. But we see this a major issue, specifically an industrial problem for us moving forward by the government implementing the blue drone rule. And it's going to only, the industry itself is going to suffer by these decisions. This is what I'm trying to explain to people. We need to educate the people that are making these decisions and understanding the big picture. By implementing these rules, you're really hurting the industry instead of growing our own domestic industry. So once we catch up to China, I know, it sounds hard, but we have to understand, look at the big picture. Propellers don't steal data. IMUs, ESCs, they don't really share data. We have to focus on the specific components that are at play here and then work on that and then expand from there. But you're absolutely right. This is a major concern moving forward, and we hope we have a resolution here coming soon.
Yeah, and this is one of the trends that we're seeing right now. Is there and I wouldn't call it a positive trend by any mean, but is there anything as a trend in the industry right now that really excites you, of things that are around the corner that are happening?
Oh, absolutely. I'm really excited on exponential, and specifically, we were made aware there's some specific payloads or sensors that are being released, and my particular favorite is ground penetrating radar. When we can outfit one of those payloads on a drone, then the game changes, as well as robotics. So if you could imagine mechanical arms and other different types of payloads on aerial platforms. So I'm super excited on what the future has to bring, and we're only limited to our imagination.
Mhm. Yep.
As a commercial drone pilot, Adrian, how much has geofencing been a problem for you? And is that something that would push you away from using DJI drones and perhaps start to use Autel drones instead? Or
It's an interesting question. I've had several issues. Well, I've had a lot of issues with geofencing, specifically for critical infrastructure. I mean, the workaround is not that difficult once you know the protocols. There's certain systems, and DJI's has gotten way better than back in the day. So, I mean, normally it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to bypass the geofencing once you provide the proper data, your LANS authorization, any waivers you might need to include. But it's not as bad as people make it. The only problem is there's a lot of people that are not educated on the proper way to get through the geofencing. And I know Autel has recently updated their firmware to include geofencing, but it won't lock you out like DJI does. But yeah, that's an issue. It's all in the education and learning the proper way to unlock that geofencing. And it's there for a good purpose, right? We want to keep the airspace as safe as possible.
yeah, I think with Autel, what they've been trying to do now, or what they've done with their firmware update, is that if you fly in an area where you're not supposed to be flying, you get a notification, but it won't actually stop you from flying. However, I do think it provides the option for the government to say, okay, Autel, we will now require you to stop drones. So that's not in place yet, but I guess that might happen in the future. I'm not sure.
I mean, just being in the drone forums, I've seen so many people complain about issues with unlocking DJI's geofencing. I personally, for the first time in my 6 years of flying a few weeks ago, had an issue unlocking myself, and I went out and bought an Autel Evo 2 as a response. So I could fly, it was Class D airspace, but I had to get this job done. And so are there any good resources you'd recommend? Because there are things that can prevent it, even if DJI says, oh, your unlock was successful. If you have another unlock in there that's stored in the app, it actually won't activate. I don't think a lot of people know that. But Brendan Schulman has been incredibly helpful with me and referring me to people when I had my first issue a few weeks back. But where would you direct someone who may just want to know how to do it properly and not come up on any roadblocks?
Yeah, so the critical thing when you have a drone business is relationships, establishing relationships with those people that'll help you when you're in a pinch like that. So I go to DJI forums, I go to YouTube, might have, there's all types of resources, but as well as your local drone, community. You might reach out to a friend that also has the same platform as you do and say, hey, what's the workaround for this? Or I'm having issues with this. So always keep a Rolodex of either people that are near to you or other assets like YouTube or the DJI forums. You can find a lot of the solutions for whatever problem you may have there.
So I know you are planning a trip soon to go up north very far to take pictures. Can you talk about that project at all?
Yeah, so we'll be out in Manitoba for a polar bear expedition. I believe in November. Fingers crossed if that we're allowed to travel. But we'll be taking some photos and noticing migration patterns for polar bears. I'm not allowed to share too much information on how we're going to achieve that, but it's a pretty big project, and I'm really looking forward to it. This is something near and dear to my heart. I really love animals and specifically polar bears. I mean, how cool is that? That is just amazing to be able to see them in their natural habitat. But we get these one-off projects that people just don't want to touch. I mean, it's just there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be filed, a lot of permits that need to be pulled, and a lot of authorizations and waivers. You have to be very careful when you're dealing with endangered species, and people don't understand that drones could really affect behaviors of certain species. So there's a lot of studies being done, but drones can also be a lot safer than tagging or other obtrusive measures of monitoring these wildlife.
Are there any other locations or those types of projects on your bucket list that you'd like to tackle?
Oh, I've done a few of them. We've done Machu Picchu a couple of years ago. And there's a few others that I have a huge bucket list item, but if you guys ever get a chance, go to Iceland, go to Norway. These are really drone-friendly countries. If you get a chance, go check the Northern Lights out. And you can go to Alaska to go see that. But I mean, some of the bucket list items I've been fortunate enough to actually see just really galvanized my love for drone photography, videography, and create a bucket list. Try to, it's difficult to get really cool shots here in Dallas, Texas. We don't have that much beautiful cinematic stuff to shoot. So every now and then I'll treat myself to a bucket list item where we travel internationally or even here domestically to get some really cool shots. And I'm sure, Kara, you have a ton of those that you can share with us.
Yeah, soon enough. Obviously, you can't drone in Joshua Tree National Park, but there were some areas in the Yucca Valley around the area that I've been able to get that are Class G airspace. In fact, there was a teepee, just a sole teepee sitting up against these mountains. And I, for some reason, just got up at sunrise the other day. I didn't expect that. So I took my drone out and I went and got it. And it just, it looked like a teepee with really thin cloth. So I didn't think anyone was in there. And I'm just buzzing around, getting some video clips, getting some photos. And then I noticed a woman standing outside, kind of looking around. And I felt so bad. I thought, oh gosh, I've woken this poor woman up. So I took I landed the drone. I flew back and landed it. But I have a ton of bucket list items, and I agree with your sentiment that Iceland is a wonderful place to go, Norway, because you just, the textures that you get, just the topography and everything is so unique. It looks like another planet. And Iceland's actually an island of volcanic ash too. So you get these black sand beaches. I've been to Iceland 3 times, but I've never really gotten my own rental car and driven up north. But there's just a whole bunch of different areas I'd like to explore. So thanks for reminding me.
Adrian, I want to go back to Machu Picchu. What did you do there? This is one of my favorite places on earth.
So we did some work with Sony. We got the waiver to fly there, Machu Picchu, but our bulk of the work was there's a place called Rainbow Mountain. It's a geological phenomenon. And what we did, we used various sensors to kind of document the progression of these mountains. So there's all different types of minerals and clays. And we were experimenting on whether thermal applications or any other type of sensors would really stand out and give us some scientific data that we can take back to the Peruvian authorities. But basically, we just studied different terrains and different altitudes and the geological formations of these beautiful mountains out there. When you're at that elevation, it's really difficult to do research. But with the drones, we mapped out several areas, and we got some phenomenal scientific data of the Rainbow Mountain that they took back and studied and overlaid over their previous information that they documented. So it's really cool. Peru is a beautiful country if you ever get a chance. Only problem is you have to get acclimated to that high altitude. So it's something that you need to be out there for a week or so to get acclimated at those extreme altitudes. But well worth it and a beautiful culture.
Yeah, it's an amazing place. We, my wife and I, we took a trip there a couple of years ago. We actually hiked to Machu Picchu for 5 days in the mountains, and it was just the experience of a lifetime. So I'm glad you did this. I'm jealous.
I have a quick
Yeah,
question. Have you ever experienced any issues with your drone flying in high altitudes though? Because I've just heard stories that they can sometimes act up when you're way up there.
Yeah, there's all types of issues at altitude. You might need specific propellers. I know on the Inspire 2, there is a specific high altitude propellers. But also when we were in Norway, you have to worry about the weather patterns at specific altitudes. So, you have really high mountains as well as moisture. So there's a lot of issues. You have to be careful with what type of drone. So, you can't bring your Mavic Mini to Norway and expect to get really good photos because the weather patterns are really drastic. They have really high wind impacts and you need a much more robust system when you're dealing with higher altitudes. And the Inspire 2 with the self-heating batteries and the different propellers is probably your best bet if you're on a professional shoot. But I mean, even the Mavic 2 Pro handled its weight out there with that high wind velocity. So, depending on what you're going for, if it's for a client, I would definitely bring your big rigs. But if it's for yourself and you're backpacking, the Mavic 2 or something similar would probably get the job done.
You briefly mentioned Sony, and we're talking about commercial use of drones. How excited are you about the Sony Airpeak, and do you see Sony potentially as a real competitor to DJI?
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people are giving Sony enough credit. I mean, if you look at it, Sony basically makes everything from TVs to phones. So it's only right that they threw their hat into the drone space. Me personally, I'm heavily invested in the Sony ecosystem. I have over $50,000 worth of cameras and lenses. And I am just super thrilled that Sony is going to allow me to put all these cameras. And, a lot of these companies or production houses, they require specific sensors, full frame sensors, whether it's Netflix or other production houses. So with Sony entering the space, I think the opportunity for our company is going to be exponential for production houses to, use these drone technologies at a reasonable rate. The Sony drone is not going to be cheap. However, compared to other, let's say if you're trying to outfit an Arri Alexa on a Cine Alta or an octocopter, you're looking at a $200,000 to $300,000 rig. where you can accomplish the similar feat with, let's say, 20 to 30 grand on a Sony Airpeak. So I just can't wait to get one in my hands. And I know, Kara, you're interested in this setup too. And I'm super excited. I believe they might be showing this at the Commercial UAV Expo coming up soon.
Oh, so
So,
it's gonna finally be ready because it was supposed to be released in spring and now it's been pushed back to fall. I love my Sony A7 III. I just captured some of the most incredible astro photos that I can't wait to share online. But that being said, would you like to see Sony also move towards more of a compact model and maybe incorporate their camera technology into something that people can carry around a little bit easier?
Right, and that's the next step. So that's the Elon Musk format. You know, you create the super expensive sports car, and then you trickle down to the Model 3. But a lot of people don't realize that Sony sensors have been in all the drones, dating back to Phantom 3 Pros and moving forward. I mean, they're essentially their CMOS sensor and a lot of other sensors were created by Sony. So it was only right that they got into the drone space. And I absolutely see moving forward, maybe a year or two from now, where they introduce a foldable, more compact, maybe something even for the recreational users. So we'll get there slowly but surely. But like I said, I'm super excited for Sony, and I'm looking forward to using their platform moving forward. And then another thing, I know you're frustrated with the pace that they're moving, but I'm kind of happy that they're not really rushing things like DJI normally makes us the beta testers, and then we figure it out. Oh well, we need to adjust this or move that. Sony's doing the right thing here by taking their time. It's been a couple of years, and they're going to do it the right way, if I understand the way they're trying to achieve this Airpeak release.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, I wrote the announcement article for DP Review, and of course, there were a ton of comments. Only 12 minutes battery life, only this, only that. And I think Sony's the type of company that probably reads this feedback and thinks, okay, how can we iterate or how can we improve upon it? So that's a really valid point. We should be patient because they are the type of company that does want to get it right or put their out the best debut product possible. So thanks for the reminder.
Adrian, we spoke about some of your projects, Machu Picchu, studying polar bears coming up. Are there any other projects in the near future that you can talk about with us?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to outfitting some different sensors. A lot of it is industrial stuff. It's not really interesting, but it's using optical gas imaging where we're detecting methane gas leaks. And this is going to be crucial for our environment moving forward. You know, we need to understand that global warming is a real thing, and we're using drone technology to educate people on why we have to be more aware of how we're using energy and all different aspects. So as far as upcoming projects, we're partnering with different firms to kind of enhance the benefits of drone technology through specific payloads and different sensors, whether it's ground penetrating radar, optical gas imaging, thermal, other capabilities. I'm really excited. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is under wraps unless the companies that have commissioned us would like to share that. But once that becomes public, love to jump back on and share that with you guys.
Thank you. I think we need you back on the show in a number of months from now.
Yeah, actually, I knew about your polar bear expedition. I was going to wait to bring you on the show, but I think we can do another full show just talking about that. So it's exciting. My last question. We're getting towards the end here of getting onto the hour, and we always ask this of our guests. What is your all-time favorite drone to fly?
Okay, that's a loaded question there because I'm the more of the mission specific for the tool type of guy, but I'm going to go back to the Inspire One. I'm going to bring it old school because the Inspire One did it all. You know, you can have thermal capabilities, you could have a micro four thirds sensor with interchangeable lenses. You can go 70 miles per hour, and you had the carbon fiber frame. So I'm more of a traditionalist or an old school guy. I know a lot of people complain you can't find batteries. I found a solution for that. I still have 3 Inspire Ones that I fly at least once a month. And, but with that said, I'm looking forward to this Mavic 3 Pro. I just can't wait to get one in my hands because I know the best drone is the one that you have with you. And I always have my Mavic Pro 2 with me at all times. It's always tucked away in my truck or close by. So if anything happens, I have access to that at all times. So Inspire 1 first, but at the end of the day, it's the drone that you always have with you, and that compact Mavic Pro is the way to go.
That's awesome. Yeah, we actually had quite a few guests that said the Inspire 1 was their all-time favorite. So that's cool. Well, Adrian, I really appreciate your time this morning talking to us and sharing everything that you do for the drone industry. I always enjoy hearing about you and hearing what you are up to. And I can't wait to see you in person at some of these shows around. Hopefully we can all meet in person and share a beer or something and chat some more. But for those of you that are listening on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, like, leave your comments as well. We love answering your comments and talking with you guys. And this is the end of the show. So thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And much success to you, Greg, and the Pilot Institute. And thanks again for having me on.